When you're in an abusive relationship with a narcissist or any abusive person, I think one of the hardest things to overcome is the hope that maybe things will get better. Because how do you know if you just stick around a little longer, if you just try a little harder, maybe things will get better. And in this video, I want to go over some reasons that you can observe for yourself why things with narcissists will always only keep getting worse. And I hope that as you consider the things that I'm going to go over in this video, it can help you let go of this toxic hope that can keep you trapped in abusive relationships. Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. First of all, what does it mean for a relationship to get better versus a relationship to get worse? What does it look like when a relationship's getting worse and when a relationship's getting better? This is really subjective. And I think this is largely in your own perception, how you feel. So this is really hard to nail down and define. But I think in an abusive relationship, the feeling of things getting worse over time can be explained in this despair that you experience when the abusive behavior relapses on you. So when you're in an abusive relationship that has abusive cycles in it, you go through these experiences in the relationship where things get disrupted, to put it lightly. You go through these horrible experiences where you're either in these really awful, ugly fights that last all night, or maybe there's a breach of trust. Maybe they cheat on you, or they lie to you about something, or you find out they've been doing something behind your back. Whatever it is, there's something that greatly disrupts the relationship and makes it impossible for you to live in peace and happiness within the relationship. And then somehow things go back to normal. And I think that's a really key phrase to pay attention to if you're thinking that way. This idea of back to normal in an abusive relationship is really this feeling of, oh, good, they're sorry, or they stopped doing this thing, or we resolved this argument that we were in and everything's back to normal. I don't really have to worry about this. Everything's going to be fine. I don't have to deal with ending this relationship or really doing anything about what happened. Everything's back to normal. And then whatever this behavior was, whatever this abusive episode or this breach of trust was, after you've convinced yourself that it's fixed and everything's back to normal, when that behavior resurfaces, there can be a very deep feeling of despair and hopelessness just wash over you. And every time this happens in this relationship, it just feels like things are getting worse and worse and worse. And in truth, that really is very commonly what happens in abusive relationships. If you could somehow graph this on a timeline, you would see this is time, the axis of time, and then this is the axis of the health and happiness of the relationship. You start out up here and then things get a little worse, but then they get better again. And then they get a little worse, but then they get a little better, but then they get more worse than they got better. And it goes like this over time as, yes, you have these little upticks where things get better or back to normal, but over time, the trajectory is a downward trend where things just get worse and worse and worse. But in these little moments where you have these upticks, you get this false hope. You get this relief or this feeling that, oh, good, finally things are going to be okay. All these things I've gone through in the past are all over now. We've finally fixed it. But of course, it just keeps doing this and getting worse and worse over time. And it gets to the point where these little upticks are worse. You're in a worse place than you were back here in the downtick. But because relatively it's better than it was last week, you have this almost euphoric sense of relief that, oh, good, everything's better, everything's back to normal. And you can be blind to how bad things have actually gotten over time. In reality, this idea of back to normal doesn't really exist, because even in a healthy relationship, if you go through something really traumatic or something that really causes a disruption in the relationship or a breach of trust, if you're able to get through it in a healthy way, if you're able to work through it together and overcome it, even then, things don't go back to normal. When something major happens to disrupt the trust in a relationship, you can only move forward. And if you successfully move forward, it requires growth and change. Things are never the same again. So if you ever feel this pull to put things back to normal, step back and really take a look at that, and really take a look at the reality of the cycle that you might be living in, and how healthy it really is, and whether or not things ever really go back to normal, and what normal even means to you at this point. I have a close friend that was in a professional relationship with somebody who was very abusive towards her. And she put up with this for years for a lot of different reasons. But I remember talking to her throughout this experience that she was going through. And there were many times that she would say to me, well, things are a lot better now. This person's been treating me a lot better. And she would always say this as if, okay, everything's going to be okay from now on. And this was part of what kind of made me see this in myself and the ways that I have told myself these things in the past. And I also just want to say, when you feel this way, this is a trademark of an abusive relationship. And abusive relationships don't get better over time, especially when you stay in them, when you are trying to make it work. This is a huge red flag when you have this narrative in your head of like, oh, everything's better now. Everything's back to normal. Things were really awful for a little bit, but somehow they've magically healed themselves. I mean, I went through hell, right? But then they said they were sorry and they've been acting a little better, so everything's better now, right? No, when you experience the kind of trauma or disruptions or a breach of trust that you experience in abusive relationships, things don't just magically get better. This abusive person doesn't just magically change into somebody else that's now just going to treat you better because you want them to. For me personally, and this is always a personal decision for everyone, but for me personally, if I ever find myself in a situation again where I'm telling myself, oh, everything's back to normal now, I'm going to really step back and strongly consider ending that relationship. So why does this happen with narcissistic people? Why do things keep getting worse over time? Why can't they just be nicer? Why can't they just cooperate and help you have a happy, peaceful relationship? Why do things have to keep getting worse and worse over time? There are several reasons for this, but one reason I think can be very easy to overlook is that your definition of better and the narcissist's definition of better are two different things. It's really easy to assume when you're in a relationship with somebody that you trust, that you think cares about you. It's really easy to assume that that person wants the same things out of the relationship that you do. Of course, this person doesn't like fighting till 3 a.m. over how bad your grammar is, right? Of course, they're not enjoying that, right? They want peace and harmony, right? They want reciprocity, right? They want for both of you to be happy, right? They don't want to be hurting your feelings all the time. They want to build trust. They want companionship, right? No, that's not what narcissists want in relationships. Narcissists don't want to be open and vulnerable with you. They don't want honesty. They don't care if you're happy. They don't care about reciprocity. They don't even care if they're hurting you. Narcissists want to control. They want to be the only thing that matters. They want somebody to serve them. They want somebody to exist solely to serve them. They want someone that asks for nothing in return, expects nothing, somebody who will never call them out on their behavior, never hold them accountable, and never acknowledge that these are the dynamics in the relationship. They want somebody to live solely to serve them, and they don't want that person ever pointing out the fact that they live solely to serve them, unless it's seen as a positive thing. They like it when you're fighting until 3 a.m. over the brand of dish soap that you bought. They like it when they can see that they have the kind of control over you that would cause you to cry into your pillow for 3 hours. That makes them feel good about themselves. That's their better. So when you've gone through this horrible episode that's upset you, and you have begged them to be nicer to you or to stop lying to you, and you've become very distraught and upset, to them, they have a feeling of like, oh, good, things are back to normal. That's when they feel like, oh, good, things are back to normal. I've obviously got complete emotional control over this person. This is really nice. And when you are having the feeling of, oh, good, things are back to normal, they are probably going through a period where they're thinking something like, how long do I have to keep this up for? They aren't feeling like things are better or back to normal. They are putting on a show, or they are doing the bare minimum they have to try to keep you around or try to convince you that things are going to be okay from now on. They are being dishonest, and they're putting a lot of effort into something that they really don't want. So that's one reason that things are always going to continue to get worse, because you are dragging each other in different directions, and you are assuming that they want the same things that you do. So you're dragging this person along this path, trying to force them to be nicer, or to be honest, or to stop being so impatient, or to stop accusing you of things you aren't doing, or to stop cheating on you, or whatever it is that they're doing that's making your life miserable. It's this feeling that you're dragging them along this path, trying to get them to be decent. And it's really because they don't want that. They don't want the things out of the relationship that you do. And you can't make someone want healthy things in a relationship. You can't make somebody want to treat you with respect, or to treat you like you matter, or that you're like an equal or something like that. So a narcissist or an abusive person is always going to pull back on that. They're always going to give you just the bare minimum to keep you around, until they decide that they don't care if you stick around or not. Now, another reason that things are going to keep getting worse in a relationship with a narcissist is this place they want you, this place of complete subservience, of existing solely to meet their needs, is a place that they're going to keep dragging you towards. And the way that they're going to do that is continually breaking your boundaries down. And this is going to just keep getting worse and worse until you leave, quite frankly. I mean, that's really the only way to stop this downward trajectory, is to leave the relationship, because they are just going to keep dragging you down, and you're going to like pull them back up a little, and then they're going to pull you down further as you go along through time. So, I mean, this can look like a relationship where maybe one day they call you a name. You know, they tell you you're stupid or something like that. Now that crosses a boundary with you, but what are you really going to do about that? The only way that you can really enforce a boundary with somebody who refuses to respect your boundaries is to leave the relationship, is quite literally to walk out of the room, to abandon this person. With normal people, when you assert boundaries, with a normal person that cares about you, even if they called you stupid, which I hope they wouldn't, but if they did, and you said, don't call me that, they would respect that. They would change their behavior, because they want the relationship to be healthy. So they would pay attention to the boundaries you set down, right? But if you're with somebody who argues back with you and explains to you why it's okay for them to call you stupid and refuses to respect your boundaries, there is no other way to enforce those boundaries than to leave the relationship. So even if you yell and scream at them, and you throw a fit, and you end up in a 3-hour argument over why they shouldn't call you stupid, if you stay in that relationship with a narcissist, to them, you're saying, you know, I might have gotten really upset, but it's okay if you call me stupid, because I'm not really going to do anything about it. I'm not really going to leave. So go ahead. And whatever it is they do to break your boundaries is just going to keep escalating. Maybe next time they call you stupid in front of their friends. And maybe next time they cheat on you and they tell you it's because you're stupid, and they can't handle being in a relationship with somebody like you. They need somebody smarter. And this is just going to keep getting worse and worse. And of course, this can escalate in all kinds of different ways. It could unfortunately be a physical thing. Maybe they push you at first, or they just kind of grab your collar at first, and maybe these physical aggressions escalate over time into a place where you get very, very seriously injured or worse. But of course, these things don't always have to be physical. There's all kinds of ways that a narcissist can break your boundaries down over time. And with a narcissist, if you stay in the relationship after they have disrespected your boundaries, as far as they're concerned, you have given them permission to keep doing it and to keep breaking down more and more of your boundaries until there is nothing left of you. There is no respect left. There is nothing left that you can ask of this person. And that's where they want you. They want somebody who asks for nothing and gives all they have. And none of that is ever going to be enough, but they still want you to keep giving everything you've got to them, to the relationship, until there's nothing left of you. So that's why they're going to keep breaking those boundaries down. In a normal relationship, it's normal to give a little bit of yourself up. I mean, you have to sacrifice a little bit of your autonomy in order to make a relationship work. And in return, you should be getting something that is worth what you're sacrificing. A relationship should be greater than the sum of its parts. It's more than just two people together. These two people together should be producing something that's greater than the two of them separately. And, you have to sacrifice a little bit in order to reap the benefits of a healthy relationship. And with a narcissist, I think you intuitively kind of know this, but these little pieces of yourself that you sacrifice, you never really get anything in return. So you sacrifice a little bit more, you give a little bit more, you give a little more of yourself away until there's nothing left of you and you've got nothing in return, or very, very little in return to show for it. So this normal mechanism of giving a little bit of yourself, sacrificing a little bit of yourself, and then getting a lot in return, getting what's worth it back in this relationship. This normal mechanism gets hijacked when you're in a narcissistic relationship and you give a little bit of yourself, continually expecting over and over again to get something in return. And I don't know at what point you realize that you're never going to get what you deserve out of this relationship. You're never going to get the respect, the love, the acceptance, the peace, the companionship that you're hoping to get after everything you've poured into this relationship. And unfortunately, you can get to the point where you get to this like sunk cost fallacy where you've given so much of yourself, so much of your time, so much of your identity, so many of the things that you used to enjoy or used to like to do. You've given so much of yourself to this relationship that it makes it harder to walk away from it. Because if you just keep giving more and more, like surely it's going to pay off at some point. You couldn't have possibly have sacrificed so much of your life to get nothing in return, or to just walk away from it and start over from scratch. It just gets harder and harder to do that the more of yourself you lose to this black hole of a relationship that you're in. Even once you get to the point where you don't have anything left to give and everything that you've given so far hasn't been enough, where do you go from there? Even then, you can still be trapped by this toxic hope that maybe things are going to get better. And you really have to be the one to draw that line. You have to decide when you have had enough. There's no handbook out there. There's no black and white hard line rule of when you know that things are never going to get better, or when you need to bail on a relationship that's never going to give anything back to you. That's a personal decision that you have to make. And there's no right or wrong answer, because it's up to you to decide what you expect to get out of your relationships. Now, one more reason that relationships with narcissists are always going to keep getting worse in this downward trajectory that we're on here is every time you push back on a narcissist, every time you try to insist that they respect your boundaries, and especially when you actually enforce those boundaries by leaving or refusing to do what they tell you to, when you actually effectively assert a boundary with a narcissist, but then you end up deciding that maybe things could get better if you give them another chance and you go back. Now they're angry. Now they're upset because they feel entitled to you. They feel like they own you. They feel like you're supposed to live for them. How dare you ask for something in return? How dare you suggest that they need to change or that they're not giving enough to the relationship? So when you assert a boundary and then you go back, things are going to get worse because whether they're even conscious of it or not, they want to punish you for trying to assert that boundary, for trying to tell them no, or for trying to leave them when you belong to them. They own you. How dare you remove yourself from them when they are entitled to use you any way they want? And that's why when you actually leave an abusive relationship, but then you decide to go back, things are almost always going to get much worse than they were before. Even after this little honeymoon period, this little uptick that you might go through, things are going to get worse. And every time you do that, they're just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. So if this video resonated with you and you can feel yourself going through this cycle, and especially if you can feel yourself holding on to these little shreds of toxic hope and wondering, like, if I leave, what if things could have gotten better? Like, what if things are just about to turn around? You know, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. What if I stay just a couple more days? That's going to be when everything turns around. Just step back and look at the reality of this relationship and how this person treats you. And ask yourself, do we really want the same things out of this relationship? Or am I with somebody who just wants to control me? Am I with somebody who doesn't care about reciprocity or mutual beneficial happiness? Am I with somebody that feels like they have a right to hurt me? Am I with somebody that enjoys 3-hour arguments over nothing? If you have different goals, you are always going to be dragging this person along, desperately trying, putting all of your energy into desperately trying to force them to show the bare minimum amount of decency that you can live with. And that is something that's never, ever going to get better. You can't set sail on a boat with somebody who enjoys sinking ships, expecting to make it to your destination together safely. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye.